Having cut his teeth initially at Blue Smoke in Lang Kwai Fong, he moved on to his own venue soon after, opening a restaurant much loved for its southern-style hospitality and authentic Cajun Creole cuisine. Today, Janice gets to chat to one of our city's only chefs from New Orleans, Jack Carson, about life, the universe, and fried chicken.
I got into cooking because I was grounded a lot as a kid. My mom was a great cook, and I learned everything from her, actually.
So because you were at home all the time, so you learned to cook there?
Yeah, I was following her. I was doing etouffees and gumbos when I was like 13. Yeah.
So, and then after that, why did you decide to take this on as your profession?
I guess the humble thing would be, it's the only thing I knew. And I enjoyed the lifestyle. I always looked up to the good chefs. And in New Orleans, to be a chef was a pretty cool thing, actually, yeah.
So are there lots of chefs in New Orleans that are kind of really central or iconic to the scene? And can you tell us a bit about them?
Yeah, there's a bunch of guys, actually. You know a lot about some of the famous guys. Emeril's one, even though he's not from New Orleans, but everybody knows of him.
Yes, he cooks a lot of Southern food.
Yeah, and the whole, it's... but there's a couple guys. I learned under a guy named Darren Nesbitt, who was at Commander's Palace for a while. Gus Martin as well. You have Susan Spicer, who's known for her books and everything else.
Yeah.
At this point, John Besh, I also works for him. He's awesome. He was on the Iron Chef.
Yeah. I think I know him from TV as well.
Yeah.
So is Southern food, like how does it fit into the American food landscape in general? How do people view Cajun cooking and Southern cultures and food in general?
Cajun cuisine's actually pretty funny. In the 90s or late 80s, early 90s, Emeril really made it a huge thing by saying, you know, the spicy Cajun everything, and you see a lot of Cajun chicken on certain menus, even though it's not Cajun chicken. But it's one of those things that even though Americans think Cajun, they think spicy right off the bat. It's more comfort food and very French and Creole roots. It depends on how you want to look at it. There's fine dining, and then there's very, very like fried catfish and chicken, and you know. So yeah, it's.
Are there different schools of Southern cooking, like different styles or regions, sub-regions within the South?
I would think so. There's Creole, there's Cajun, there's redneck cooking, there's barbecue, there's there's a lot of different ways.
And so, how would you classify yourself?
I would like to think myself as contemporary Creole cuisine. So the new way of doing old dishes.
And so how old were you when you started cooking professionally?
I still don't think I'm cooking professionally.
Well, you have a restaurant, so I hope so.
No, I think it's just a mom and pop kind of thing, and we're just feeding people. I would say when I moved back to New Orleans after I went to college.
Did you do anything cooking related in college?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been in kitchens ever since I was 15, but it wasn't for what I think of as professional cooking.
Okay.
But I would say when I was 23, even though I was in kitchens since I was 15. But yeah, I think
Is that
23.
when you decided that, or did you decide long ago that that was all you were going to do?
I decided when I was very young that I was going to be a chef, yeah.
And that was because you looked up to a lot of them, and what about chef life or being a chef?
The lifestyle's great. I mean, you can stay up late and party, and you know, it's you run a party 24/7. You know, so to be behind the scenes, as a young kid, it was a little depressing, but because everybody's having fun, but we're not.
Yeah,
you know,
and
we're
when
working.
you start out, it's always difficult, right?
Well, I mean, the New Year's Eve, you're in the kitchen.
Yeah,
the Christmas
exactly.
Eve, you're in the kitchen. You know, so it was hard, but now it's getting easier.
So tell us a bit about what brought you to Hong Kong, or what you were doing right before you came.
I was in New York City working for the BLT brand for Laurent Turandel, and I met a guy named Chris Mark, and he brought me here. He came in and he was opening a BLT, and we just had a conversation. And one day he offered me a job, and after that I didn't hear from him for about a year. And then he offered me another job, and I said, why not? You know, a chef is only as good as his environment. And if you're in the same spot your entire life, that's all you know. So I said, why not?
So speaking of environments, how difficult or interesting has your journey been to introduce Southern food to Hong Kong people?
Well, I've had a lot of help. Again, Chris definitely set up Blue Smoke when I first got here. And it was an interesting thing. It was very hard for people to understand smoking meats, and it was a new thing at that time.
Yeah.
But after that, I mean, Creole cuisine, in order to do it for Hong Kong, a lot of people are like, what is Creole, you know?
Yeah.
It's a variation of French and American, but it's the same ingredients, the same latitude, the same environment, just on the other side of the world.
So what are, I mean, ingredients-wise, has it been easy or difficult to get what you want in Hong Kong?
No, it's exactly the same, actually. I mean, okra and bell peppers and onions are...
So it's like the same latitude, so just cooking different.
Yeah, I mean, seafood, this is a seafood-based and rice-based cuisine, so yeah, we fit right in. It's just, you know, I think it would definitely fit with everybody else's palate.
How has the reception been by diners? You know, do they understand, or do you get a lot of questions? Do you get any weird kind of requests and things?
When I first got here, it was too salty. Everything too salty, as most Western chefs say. Like, everything's salty. But now I think when we first got here, it was very, very heavy. Everything was, like, the food was very heavy, roux-based sauces and very, I want to say it's more of a workers in the field kind of food. But yeah.
So Hong Kong people are known to have quite subtle palates. Do you feel like you've had to compromise on your cooking in order to suit their tastes?
Definitely. I think that we have to tone it down a bit, but it's not a huge compromise. I think it's just a little adjustment.
Why bring Southern food to Hong Kong?
Why not?
When you first came, there was very little on the Hong Kong market that was doing kind of your kind of food. Do you think that that was more of a challenge or a difficulty or actually an advantage?
I think Hong Kong's, as far as the world trends go, they're always behind a little bit. So, I mean, when we started Blue Smoke, it was, what was it, 4 years ago? And now you have how many barbecue places in Hong Kong? Then, I mean, there's one on Elgin going up. There's one near Elgin already. There's one down on Ghost Street. Like, there's a lot.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, and that's just barbecue, which is a piece of Cajun. I don't think that Creole and Cajun cuisine will catch on as much as barbecue, but I think that there definitely is a space for it.
Well, with things like barbecue, do Hong Kong restaurant restrictions, the way that barbecues can be set up in a restaurant, has that affected you in any way? Because, for example, you can't usually have charcoal, for example, burning indoors. Does that affect you at all?
Definitely. There's certain permits and everything that needs to happen. It's actually fun to see how the competitors are doing it. And I noticed even Hard Rock Cafe is doing a smoked rib or whatever, but I know that it's not actually smoked. It's very, very hard to do it. I mean, we recently went to the Great American Barbecue in Cyberport, and there was no charcoal and no wood, and it was an outdoor event.
So how did you smoke and barbecue outdoors, like without charcoal? What do you use instead?
Well, at Blue Smoke, we did. We brought in actually a huge thing. Now, we do it in an oven. Yeah.
And how does that compare to the US, say, when you were working back in New Orleans or even in New York? How do they set up their kitchens?
In the US, it's huge venues with, I mean, massive smokers outside, and it's not a problem at all. It's completely different compared to here. I think it has to do with real estate.
In what way?
Well, we have a lot more of it.
Yeah, a lot more space to do these things.
Yeah.
And how about life in Hong Kong in general? Do you find it, how different is it from life back home, and do you like it?
Well, when I first started renting, it was in New Orleans, and I had a house, and then I moved to New York, and I had a tiny apartment, and then I moved into Hong Kong, where it was a very tiny apartment. I think tomorrow I'm going to move into like a closet.
And the lifestyle or the chefing community, how do you find that?
I find that the chefs here they actually stick together, and it's much more tighter of a community, and I love it. I think it's great. I love Hong Kong.
Is, say, New York or New Orleans, how do they compare from like a competitor's standpoint? Like, are chefs very competitive, or do they stick together, like you say, in the same way that chefs do in Hong Kong?
In New York, it's a dog-eat-dog world. It's very competitive, and
quite cutthroat.
I mean, yeah, it's very cutthroat, but I mean, nobody will help you. As opposed to here, it's more of, we're just happy to see people, you know, doing good for food, actually.
So on your menu at Restoration, do you change it up every so often according to seasons, or is it just kind of a classic approach and you want to present those?
Certain dishes we definitely keep year round, but obviously we have to make changes seasonally.
Is that something that you want to do, or is that?
Of course, I love using seasonal ingredients, and we like to try and stay near Hong Kong as far as sourcing our ingredients as possible.
So what inspires you to create these new seasonal changes?
Sometimes price, but no, it's actually the quality of the ingredient. Yeah.
So like when you see an ingredient, you just think, you know, this is what I want to do something with it because it's so good. Or...
Yeah, I mean, if you take fried green tomatoes in spring, for instance, as opposed to some people that will do them year round, I think it's, you know, I like only to do it in the summer and certain tomato salads and things like this. But heartier dishes, like braised meats and things like this, definitely for winter.